The busy halls of Grady Memorial Hospital in Atlanta never seemed to slow down, and Sarah Jenkins knew this better than anyone. As a nurse practitioner with 6 years of experience, she had seen it all, or at least she thought she had, until that sunny Tuesday morning in March. Sarah stood at the nurse's station, her dark brown fingers moving swiftly across the keyboard as she updated patient records. Her natural hair was pulled back neatly into a bun, and despite working since 6 a.m., her white uniform still looked crisp and clean. At 32, she had already made a name for herself in the hospital as one of the most caring and efficient nurses on staff. "Sarah, could you help out in physical therapy today?" They're short-staffed, her supervisor, Mrs. Thompson, called out from across the desk. Sarah nodded, though inside she felt a little nervous. The physical therapy wing wasn't her usual department, but she always liked to help where needed. As she walked down the long corridor to the PT wing, she could hear laughter echoing from one of the rooms. It wasn't the usual kind of sound you heard in a hospital. It was deep, genuine, and full of joy. Sarah couldn't help but smile, even before she knew where it was coming from. Turning the corner, she saw him for the first time. Marcus Thompson sat in his wheelchair, telling jokes to a group of other patients as they all did their exercises. His smile lit up his whole face, and even though he was clearly working hard with his upper body weights, he made it look easy. And that's when I told the guy, "Well, at least I always have a seat ready wherever I go," Marcus said, causing everyone around him to burst out laughing again. Sarah found herself chuckling too, drawing his attention to her. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the busy hospital seemed to fade away. Marcus was 35, with warm brown eyes and a strong build that showed he took his physical therapy seriously. His wheelchair was sleek and athletic, clearly designed for someone who didn't let it slow them down. Sarah later learned he had been a Paralympic athlete, competing in wheelchair basketball until a recent complication required surgery. "Hey there, are you our backup today?" Marcus called out, his friendly voice carrying across the room. "I promise we don't bite. Well, except for Mrs. Rodriguez over there when she's doing her shoulder exercises." An elderly lady playfully swatted at him with her towel, making everyone laugh again. Sarah walked over, introducing herself to the group. She couldn't help but notice how Marcus made everyone feel comfortable, turning what could be a difficult therapy session into something almost fun. Throughout the morning, Sarah helped different patients with their exercises, but she kept finding her attention drawn back to Marcus. He didn't just work on his own exercises, he encouraged others, shared tips he'd learned, and never let anyone give up when things got tough. During his water therapy session, Marcus showed incredible upper body strength, moving through the exercises with determination. "You know," he said to Sarah as she helped spot him, "some people think being in a wheelchair means life stops. I like to think it just means finding new ways to move forward." Sarah found herself impressed not just by his physical strength, but by his positive attitude. When she took his vital signs after the session, their hands touched briefly as she wrapped the blood pressure cuff around his arm. Both of them felt a small spark of connection, though neither mentioned it. As her shift in PT came to an end, Sarah gathered her things, ready to return to her regular duties. "Same time tomorrow?" Marcus asked hopefully. "I heard they're still short-staffed for the rest of the week." "I'll be here," Sarah replied with a smile, surprised by how much she was looking forward to it. As she walked back to her regular wing, she realized this had been one of the most interesting mornings she'd had at work in a long time. What Sarah didn't know then was that this was just the beginning. That chance assignment to the physical therapy wing would change both their lives in ways neither of them could have imagined. Sometimes the best love stories start in the most unexpected places, and this one was about to unfold in ways that would challenge everything they thought they knew about love, ability, and the power of the human spirit. Over the next few weeks, Sarah found more and more reasons to visit the physical therapy wing, even after they were no longer short-staffed. Her colleagues noticed how she always volunteered for extra shifts there, and some of them started to tease her gently about it. "Girl, you're glowing every time you come back from PT," her friend Lisa said one day during lunch break. Sarah just smiled and focused on eating her sandwich, but she couldn't deny the truth in those words. Something about Marcus made her whole day brighter. Marcus, too, found himself looking forward to the days when Sarah worked in PT. He started scheduling his therapy sessions to match her shifts. One day, while he was doing his arm exercises, he finally gathered his courage. "Hey Sarah, He called out, his voice a little nervous. "Would you maybe want to grab coffee sometime? There's a nice cafe just across from the hospital." He held his breath, waiting for her answer. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "I'd love to," she answered, trying to sound casual even though she was excited inside. They set up their first date for that Saturday. The cafe date turned into dinner, and soon they were seeing each other regularly outside the hospital. Marcus took Sarah to wheelchair basketball games where he coached kids, showing her a whole world she hadn't known existed. Sarah introduced him to her favorite jazz clubs, happy to find that Marcus loved dancing in his own way, moving smoothly to the rhythm in his chair. But not everything was easy. One evening, while they were having dinner at a restaurant, an older couple kept staring at them. Sarah could feel their disapproving looks. Some people couldn't understand a black woman dating a white man in a wheelchair. "Just ignore them," Marcus whispered, reaching across the table to hold her hand. "Their small minds don't define our happiness." Sarah squeezed his hand back, but inside she worried. She knew they would face more challenges like this. When she told her family about Marcus, their reactions were mixed. Her mother was supportive but concerned. "Baby, are you sure about this?" her mother asked during Sunday dinner. "Life with a disabled man won't be easy, and you're already a nurse. Do you want to be a caretaker at home too?" "Mama, Marcus doesn't need a caretaker," Sarah explained patiently. "He's one of the most independent people I know, and he makes me happier than anyone ever has." Marcus had his own battles to fight. Some nights, when the pain from his old injuries kept him awake, he wondered if he was being fair to Sarah. "You deserve someone who can dance with you properly," he said one evening as they watched a romantic movie at his apartment. Sarah turned to face him, her eyes serious. "Marcus Thompson, stop that right now. I fell in love with you, not your wheelchair. And by the way, you're an amazing dancer. You just do it differently." Their love grew stronger as they faced each challenge together. Marcus showed Sarah how to help him transfer from his chair when he needed it, and she learned that asking for help didn't make him any less independent. Sarah helped Marcus see that her love wasn't about pity or duty. It was about the connection they shared. One day, while they were having a picnic in the park, a little girl came up to them. "Are you in love?" she asked innocently, looking between Sarah and Marcus. "Yes, we are," Sarah answered, smiling at Marcus. "Cool," the little girl said. "My mommy says love doesn't care what people look like." She ran back to her mother, leaving Sarah and Marcus grinning at her simple wisdom. As spring turned to summer, Sarah and Marcus created their own way of doing things. They found restaurants with good wheelchair access, planned dates that worked for both of them, and learned to ignore the stares and whispers. Their love wasn't about what they couldn't do. It was about all the things they could do together. What they didn't know yet was that their biggest challenge and greatest joy was still ahead of them. But for now, they were breaking through barriers one day at a time, showing the world that true love knows no boundaries. Marcus had been planning this moment for 3 months. Every detail needed to be perfect. The annual Atlanta Adaptive Arts Festival was coming up, and he had a surprise that would change both their lives forever. Sarah didn't suspect anything when Marcus asked her to come to the festival. After dating for a year and a half, she was used to supporting him at events like this. Marcus had become a well-known figure in the adaptive sports community, coaching wheelchair basketball and teaching dance to people with disabilities. The morning of the festival was bright and sunny. Sarah wore a pretty yellow sundress that Marcus loved, and her natural curls bounced as she walked beside him through the festival grounds. The air was filled with music, laughter, and the smell of food from different vendors. "You seem nervous today," Sarah said, noticing how Marcus kept checking his phone. "Is everything okay with your performance?" Marcus smiled, trying to stay calm. "Just want everything to go right," he said. What Sarah didn't know was that in his pocket was a small velvet box that felt like it weighed 100 pounds. The performance area was already crowded when they arrived. Marcus had told Sarah he was doing a simple wheelchair dance demonstration, but backstage, 20 of his students were getting ready, all of them in on the secret. "Okay, everyone remember their parts?" Marcus asked his group. They all nodded excitedly. Some of them had been practicing for weeks just for this moment. When it was time for the performance, Sarah sat in the front row. The music started. It was At Last by Etta James, their song from their first dance together. Marcus rolled out onto the stage in his special performance wheelchair, which sparkled under the lights. The dance began normally, with Marcus showing off the smooth moves that had first impressed Sarah. Then, one by one, his students joined him on stage. Each of them carried a large card, but Sarah couldn't read what was written on them yet. The dancers moved in perfect harmony, their wheelchairs spinning and gliding across the stage. Then they formed a line behind Marcus, and one by one, they turned their cards around. Sarah's hands flew to her mouth as she read the message. Sarah Jenkins, you showed me that love has no limits. You see me for who I am. You make every day brighter. Will you? Marcus rolled forward, doing a perfect spin before stopping right in front of Sarah. The last card turned. Marry me. The music softened as Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out the ring box. With the skills he developed through years of athletics, he smoothly lowered himself to one knee beside his chair, using his upper body strength to balance. Sarah, he said, his voice carrying through the microphone he wore. Before I met you, I thought I knew what strength was. But you showed me that real strength is in the heart. You never saw my wheelchair as a barrier. You just saw me. Every day with you is an adventure, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me? Tears were streaming down Sarah's face. She didn't care that hundreds of people were watching. She didn't hear the crowd holding their breath. All she saw was Marcus, the man she loved, holding out a beautiful ring and offering her his heart. Yes, she cried, jumping up from her seat. Yes, yes, yes. The crowd erupted in cheers as Sarah hugged Marcus, almost knocking him over. His students wheeled forward, throwing rose petals over them as Marcus slipped the ring onto Sarah's finger. It was a simple but elegant design, a white gold band with a small diamond, just like Sarah had once mentioned she liked. Someone in the crowd started recording with their phone, and by that evening, their proposal video was already going viral on social media. People loved their story, the nurse and the Paralympic athlete, showing the world that love breaks all barriers. As they celebrated with their friends and family later that day, Sarah couldn't stop looking at her ring. You planned all this? She asked Marcus, still amazed. With a little help, he grinned, nodding toward his students who were enjoying the celebration. I wanted to show you that our love is worth celebrating in a big way. What they didn't know then was that their proposal was just the beginning of an even bigger adventure. Their wedding would bring surprises that neither of them could have imagined. The morning of September 15th arrived with perfect weather. Sarah stood in the bridal room of Sweet Auburn Baptist Church, where her parents had married 30 years ago. Her hands trembled slightly as her mother helped her put on her wedding dress. You look beautiful, baby, her mother said, carefully adjusting the cream-colored gown. The dress was special, designed to look gorgeous whether Sarah was standing or sitting beside Marcus in his chair. The skirt could be adjusted in length, something the dressmaker had suggested to make their first dance easier. In another room, Marcus was getting ready with his best man, his younger brother David. Marcus had been practicing for weeks with his special leg braces, determined to stand for at least part of the ceremony. The braces were hidden under his dark blue suit pants, and only a few people knew about his plan. You sure about this? David asked, helping Marcus adjust his bow tie. You don't have to stand if it's too much. Marcus smiled confidently. I want to look into Sarah's eyes when we say our vows. I've been practicing. I can do this. The church filled with 200 guests, Sarah's large family from Georgia, Marcus's relatives from Michigan, and friends from both the hospital and the adaptive sports community. Their wedding was bringing together people who might never have met otherwise. Sarah's father waited outside the bridal room, trying not to cry when he saw his daughter. Marcus is a good man, he said softly. This meant a lot to Sarah. Her father had been the hardest to convince at first, but now he was Marcus's biggest supporter. The music started, and the ceremony began. First came the bridesmaids in purple dresses, then the groomsmen. Marcus rolled down the aisle confidently, looking handsome in his suit. He took his place at the altar, giving a small nod to his physical therapist who stood nearby, ready to help if needed. When the wedding march began, everyone stood. Sarah appeared at the doors with her father, and Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. She was stunning in her dress, her dark skin glowing, her smile brighter than any diamond. As Sarah reached the altar, Marcus surprised everyone. With determined movements and a little help from David, he stood up, supported by his braces. A soft gasp went through the church. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, happy tears. I told you I'd stand by your side, Marcus whispered as she reached him. The ceremony was beautiful in its unique way. The pastor spoke about love that breaks barriers and sees beyond the surface. When it was time for their vows, Sarah and Marcus had written their own. Marcus, Sarah began, her voice strong and clear, I promise to be not just your wife, but your partner in every adventure. I promise to love you for who you are, to support your dreams, and to face whatever challenges come our way together. Marcus's voice shook slightly as he spoke. Sarah, you showed me that love doesn't see limitations, only possibilities. I promise to be the man you deserve, to make you laugh every day, and to love you with all my heart for the rest of our lives. When it was time for their first dance, Marcus surprised everyone again. Using his braces and holding Sarah close, they moved together to At Last, their special song. They had practiced this dance for months, creating their own style that worked perfectly for them. The reception was full of joy and laughter. Marcus's wheelchair basketball team had decorated his chair with streamers and just married signs. Sarah's hospital colleagues had arranged a special dance where everyone, whether standing or sitting, moved together. Later that evening, as they cut their cake together, Sarah looked at Marcus with pure happiness. I love you, Mr. Thompson, she said softly. I love you too, Mrs. Thompson, he replied, his eyes shining. What they didn't know was that their biggest adventure was still to come. Their honeymoon would bring a surprise that would change their lives forever. But for now, they celebrated their love, surrounded by family and friends who had learned that true love knows no bounds. The morning after their wedding, Sarah and Marcus headed to Miami to board their honeymoon cruise ship, the Caribbean Princess. The cruise line was known for being fully wheelchair accessible, which was why they had chosen it for their special trip. Ready for our adventure, Mrs. Thompson? Marcus asked as they approached the massive ship. Sarah still got butterflies every time she heard her new name. She squeezed his hand and nodded, excited about the week ahead. The ship was impressive, with wide hallways and smooth floors that made it easy for Marcus to move around. Their accessible cabin was on deck 8, with a private balcony where they could watch the ocean. But Sarah noticed something strange. Marcus kept checking his phone and disappearing for short periods. Just making sure everything's perfect for our trip, he would say whenever she asked. But Sarah knew her husband well enough now to sense that something was different. He had that same nervous energy she'd seen before he proposed. On their first day at sea, Marcus went to what he called a quick medical checkup at the ship's medical center. It's just routine, he explained. All passengers with special needs have to do it. But when he came back, he was grinning like he knew a big secret. Sarah tried to forget about it and enjoy their time together. They watched beautiful sunsets from their balcony, enjoyed wonderful dinners at the ship's restaurants, and even went to a dance party where Marcus showed off his wheelchair dance moves that had made her fall in love with him. But the mysteries continued. Marcus kept getting calls that he would take in private. Once, Sarah overheard him saying something about equipment, and everything's ready, but he quickly changed the subject when she came near. You're not planning another big surprise, are you? Sarah asked on their second night, as they watched the stars from their balcony. You know, the proposal was enough to last a lifetime. Marcus just smiled and kissed her hand. Can't a man want everything to be perfect for his new wife? The next morning, they had breakfast delivered to their room. As they ate, Marcus seemed extra nervous. He kept checking the time and hardly touched his food. When Sarah asked if he felt seasick, he shook his head. Actually, he said, taking her hand, there's somewhere we need to go this morning. Something I need to show you. Sarah's curiosity grew as they made their way through the ship. Instead of heading to the pool deck or entertainment areas, Marcus led them toward the medical center again. But this time it felt different. Just before they reached the medical center, Marcus stopped in a quiet hallway. Sarah, he said seriously, you know how much I love you, right? And how I always want to be the best husband I can be for you. Sarah nodded, her heart beating faster. Marcus, you're scaring me a little. Is everything okay? He smiled, but his eyes were emotional. Everything is more than okay. But before we go in there, I need you to know something. I've been working on a surprise for months. I wanted to wait until we were married because, well, I wanted it to be a gift for both of us. Sarah knelt down beside his wheelchair, holding both his hands. Whatever it is, you can tell me. I can't tell you, Marcus said, his eyes twinkling now, but I can show you. Are you ready for another adventure, Mrs. Thompson? Before Sarah could answer, the medical center doors opened, and a team of people in white coats came out to greet them. Sarah recognized one of them, Dr. Chen, Marcus's longtime physical therapist from back home. But what was she doing on their honeymoon cruise? Marcus squeezed Sarah's hand and whispered, "Trust me, this is just the beginning." What waited behind those doors would change their lives forever. But for now, Sarah could only follow her husband, her heart full of love and curiosity about what this mysterious surprise could be. Inside the medical center, Sarah's eyes widened at what she saw. The regular examination room had been transformed into something that looked like a high-tech rehabilitation center. Strange equipment lined the walls, and in the center stood something that looked like a cross between a treadmill and a robot. Dr. Chen stepped forward with a warm smile. "Hello, Sarah, Marcus. Are you ready to make history?" Sarah looked between her husband and the doctor, confusion clear on her face. "What's going on, Marcus?" Marcus took a deep breath. "Remember when I kept disappearing for appointments these past few months? I wasn't just going to regular physical therapy." He gestured to the equipment around them. "I was testing new technology, revolutionary technology." Dr. Chen walked over to the strange-looking machine in the center. "This is the NeuroWalk 3000, she explained. "It's a new robotic assistance device that works with the patient's own neural pathways. Marcus has been part of our trial program for the past 6 months." Sarah's nursing knowledge kicked in as she looked at the equipment more closely. Is this what I think it is?" Marcus smiled. "Watch this." He wheeled himself over to the machine, where 2 assistants helped him into a standing position. They attached various sensors to his legs and back, then connected him to the device. "The surgery I had last year wasn't just routine," Marcus explained as they worked. "They implanted tiny sensors in my spine. These machines can read those signals and help my legs move the way I want them to." Sarah watched in amazement as Marcus gripped the support bars. The machine hummed to life, and then, slowly but surely, Marcus took a step forward, then another, and another. Tears filled Sarah's eyes as she watched her husband actually walk, across the room. It wasn't perfect or completely natural, but it was real movement, controlled by Marcus himself. "We've been developing this technology for years," Dr. Chen explained, seeing Sarah's amazement. "Marcus has been an ideal candidate because of his athletic background and determination. When he heard about our cruise ship trial program, he wanted it to be a surprise for you." Marcus walked back to where Sarah stood frozen in shock. "I'm not promising miracles," he said softly. "This isn't a cure. I'll still use my wheelchair most of the time. But with this technology, I might be able to walk short distances, maybe even dance with you standing up for more than just one song." Sarah threw her arms around him, careful not to disturb the equipment. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered through happy tears. "I wanted to wait until we were married," Marcus explained. "I didn't want you to say yes to me because of this possibility. I wanted you to marry me exactly as I was." He paused, looking into her eyes. "Plus, I wanted to see your face when you saw it for the first time." The medical team explained that the cruise ship had been specially chosen for this trial. For the next week, Marcus would have daily sessions with the equipment. The ship's medical center had been set up as a temporary research facility, with several other patients also testing the technology. "This is why you were so mysterious about the honeymoon location," Sarah realized. "And all those phone calls." Marcus nodded. "We had to coordinate everything perfectly. The equipment, the medical team, the permissions from the cruise line. It was worth all the secrecy to see your face just now." Dr. Chen stepped forward again. "Sarah, with your nursing background, we'd love to have you involved in Marcus's sessions. Would you like to learn how to assist with the equipment?" Sarah nodded eagerly, already looking at the machinery with professional interest. This wasn't just a honeymoon anymore, it was the beginning of a whole new chapter in their lives. As they left the medical center that day, Sarah held Marcus's hand tightly. Tomorrow, they would begin his first full session with the NeuroWalk 3000, but for now, they had a honeymoon to enjoy and a future full of possibilities to dream about. For the next 5 days of their honeymoon cruise, Sarah and Marcus fell into a new routine. Every morning after breakfast, they would head to the medical center where Marcus would work with the NeuroWalk 3000. Sarah watched in amazement as her husband grew stronger each day. "Keep going, Marcus. You're doing great," Sarah called out encouragingly during his third session. Marcus was walking between the parallel bars, sweat running down his face. The machine helped his movements, but it still took incredible strength and concentration on his part. Dr. Chen stood nearby, taking notes on her tablet. "His progress is remarkable," she told Sarah quietly. "Most patients take weeks to achieve what Marcus has done in just a few days." Marcus had always been determined, but Sarah had never seen him work this hard before. Even when his arms shook from holding the support bars, even when his legs trembled with exhaustion, he kept pushing forward. "Just one more lap," Marcus said through gritted teeth, taking careful steps. Sarah noticed how the movements were becoming smoother each day. At first, they had been jerky and mechanical, but now they were starting to look more natural. During their breaks, Sarah learned how to help adjust the equipment. Her nursing skills came in handy as she quickly understood the medical aspects of the technology. The team taught her how to check the sensors and monitor Marcus's vital signs during the sessions. "You know," Marcus said during one of their rest periods, "I never thought I'd have my wife helping with my physical therapy on our honeymoon." They both laughed at how unusual their honeymoon had turned out to be. But it wasn't all work. In the afternoons, they enjoyed being regular honeymooners. They watched shows in the ship's theater, had romantic dinners at different restaurants, and spent quiet moments watching the sunset from their balcony. Marcus still used his wheelchair for these activities, saving his energy for the morning sessions. On the fourth day, something amazing happened. During his session, Marcus let go of one of the support bars while walking. For just a few steps, he moved forward holding onto only one bar, his balance better than ever before. "Did you see that?" he called out excitedly to Sarah. His face was glowing with pride, and Sarah felt her heart swell with love and admiration. Dr. Chen was equally excited. "This is incredible progress," she said. "Marcus, would you like to try something special tomorrow? I think you're ready for the next level." The next morning, they arrived at the medical center to find the equipment slightly different. The parallel bars had been replaced with a single bar, and there was open space beyond it. "Today," Dr. Chen announced, "we're going to try walking without support for a short distance. Sarah, would you stand about 5 steps away from the bar?" Sarah's heart beat faster as she took her position. Marcus got into the equipment, gripping the single bar nervously. This was different from anything they'd tried before. "Remember," Dr. Chen said calmly, "the NeuroWalk will support you if you start to fall. Just focus on Sarah and take it one step at a time." Marcus took a deep breath. Then, slowly, he let go of the bar. The room fell silent as he took one step toward Sarah, then another, and another. Sarah held out her hands, tears streaming down her face as her husband walked toward her, really walked, for the first time. His steps were slow and careful, but he was doing it. When Marcus reached her, they both broke down crying, holding each other tightly. The medical team applauded, but Sarah and Marcus barely heard them. This moment was just for them. "I love you so much," Sarah whispered. "I love you too," Marcus replied, his voice shaking with emotion. "Thank you for being here for this." Later that evening, as they sat on their balcony watching the Caribbean sunset, Marcus turned to Sarah. "You know this doesn't change anything about who I am, right?" Sarah smiled and took his hand. "Of course not. You're still the same amazing man I fell in love with. This is just one more adventure we get to share together." As their honeymoon cruise came to an end, Sarah and Marcus sat in their final meeting with Dr. Chen and her team. The past week had changed their lives in ways they never expected. "The good news," Dr. Chen said, smiling at the newlyweds, "is that you'll be able to continue the treatment back home. We're opening a new research center in Atlanta next month, and we want Marcus to be one of our primary patients." Marcus squeezed Sarah's hand excitedly. They had been wondering how they would continue this journey after the cruise ended. The thought of leaving the NeuroWalk 3000 behind had been weighing heavily on their minds. "Even better," Dr. Chen continued, "Sarah, we'd like to offer you a position as a specialized nurse in our program. Your experience this week has shown us that you have a natural talent for this work." Sarah's eyes widened in surprise. This wasn't just about Marcus anymore. It was becoming a shared mission for both of them. "I would love that," she said, already thinking about how she could help other patients like Marcus. As they packed their bags on the last morning, Marcus pulled out a small gift wrap box from his suitcase. "I got you something," he said, handing it to Sarah. Inside was a beautiful silver photo frame. Marcus had already put a picture in it, one of their first successful walking session when he had reached Sarah without holding onto the support bar. Their faces were full of joy and tears, caught in that perfect moment. To remind us that anything is possible, Marcus said softly. Back home in Atlanta, their life took on a new rhythm. 3 times a week, they went to the new research center together. Sarah worked with other patients while Marcus continued his sessions with the NeuroWalk 3000. His progress continued to impress everyone. One morning, about a month after their return, Marcus had a surprise for Sarah at the center. When she arrived at work, she found him already in the equipment, but something was different. Music was playing softly in the background. At last, their special song. "May I have this dance?" Marcus asked, standing tall in the NeuroWalk system. With Dr. Chen's approval, they had practiced this moment for weeks in secret. Sarah stepped into his arms, and together they swayed to the music. It wasn't the same as their wedding dance. Marcus's movements were still assisted by the machine, but it was magical in its own way. "You never stop surprising me, do you?" Sarah said, happy tears in her eyes. Their story began to spread. Other patients at the center found hope in seeing Marcus's progress. Local news stations came to do stories about the revolutionary technology and the couple who were helping to develop it. But it wasn't always easy. There were hard days when the equipment didn't work perfectly, or when Marcus's body was too tired to cooperate. On those days, Sarah reminded him that he was perfect just as he was, with or without the walking technology. Marcus continued coaching wheelchair basketball, now with Sarah by his side as the team's medical supervisor. His players were excited about his progress with the NeuroWalk. They loved him for who he had always been, their dedicated coach who taught them to never give up. 6 months after their honeymoon, they held a small party at their house. Friends and family gathered to celebrate not just their marriage, but all the progress they had made. Marcus demonstrated his walking ability, now smooth enough to cross their living room with minimal support. "You know what the best part of all this is?" Marcus said that night, as they sat on their porch swing after everyone had left. "It's not just about me walking. It's about us helping others. Every day at the center, we're giving people hope." Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder. "And this is just the beginning," she said. "Think about where this technology might be in 5 years or 10. Marcus smiled, thinking about their future. They had already started talking about having children someday, about building a family together. The NeuroWalk 3000 was just one part of their story. Their love was the real miracle. "Whatever comes next," Marcus said, "we'll face it together." Sarah nodded, watching the stars come out in the Atlanta sky. Their love story had started with a chance meeting in a hospital, grown through challenges and surprises, and now was helping change lives. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was better. It was real.